Super Rugby round 16, the Friday games, done and dusted. Probably a lot of disappointed fans out there, except for Tars fans. Bulls fans won't be too disappointed, although they probably would have still preferred a win. But yeah, a draw for the Blues and the Bulls, and a loss for the Rebels at home. So a fair bit of disappointment to go around. But either way, let's have a look at the games. The first one, as I said, I went to this one. The Blues hosting the Bulls in what was pretty much a must-win game for the Blues to keep their faint hopes of a playoff spot alive. They needed to get a win, and they looked comfortable at times. They built a pretty decent lead up in this game, but it still managed to finish in a draw as the Bulls came back into it. It was very wet in this game. My dad's been a bit crook, so he stayed home. And my daughter's been crook, so my wife stayed home to look after the kids. So I ended up going to this one by myself in the wet and miserable weather. I did manage to meet up with Driving Mall at halftime, so I guess that was a bit of a nice thing to do, to not watch the game by myself. But yeah, it wasn't the best crowd because it was wet, although there were few vocal Bulls fans at that one, man. Like when they would score, I could hear those guys making themselves heard. So I guess there was a loyal following. The Bulls did take the lead early, a penalty through Libok, but Plummer evened it up. Liebenberg got the first try of the game. A maul. Sneyman from the maul got the ball and did a nice little offload. Despite the wet weather, that guy's hands are still pretty good. Liebenberg caught it and they missed the conversion, so it was 8-3. Tuangafasi got a try just before half an hour. Interestingly, after the Ruru try had been TMO'd as not a try, at the game I thought it looked like a try, and I've since watched it back and I think probably it touched the grass on the line, but it didn't really make a difference in the end, seeing as Tuangafasi scored the try. Ben Skeen is not my favourite TMO anyway. But Tuangafasi from about a metre out goes over. They kick the conversion and it's 10-8, so the lead changes, and that's how it is at half-time. Second half, Scrafton gets his try, again from about a metre out. Somehow the conversion hits the post, which is pretty costly by the end of the game. At that point, it is 15 points to 8. That's about as comfortable as the Blues get. Hendricks gets a try. Great bit of individual brilliance once he's in some space down the wing, kicks it, collects it, and yeah, in that kind of weather, even though the second half wasn't as wet, it was pretty dry actually in the second half, but the ground still would have been wet. Yeah, and then Libok kicks it from the sideline to even up the scores 15-all. Akira Ioane gets his try from the back of a scrum, and he does the fingers, like, stop talking. Yeah, by the end of the game, might regret that a wee bit. 22-15 it was, and then Libok gets his try. They had advantage. He cuts through. 22-all. That's how it finishes. Plummer has a chance at the end, pretty much right on the hooter, to kick a penalty to win the game. He misses it, so the Blues lose. I guess there'll be a few questions about, firstly, Otere Black did attempt to take a drop goal when they had the advantage, which led to the penalty. I suppose they could have played instead of taking the drop goal. They could have got Black to take the kick, although he's only a slightly better kicker than Plummer. And they could have gone for the line out. There's a bunch of coulds, woulds, shoulds, but they went for Plummer with the penalty and it missed. It was kind of a 50-50 play because Plummer's boot, checked after this game, and I think he kicked at 60% for this game, so it won't make too much difference to his overall stats. His kicking percentage is 54%, so it's pretty much a flip of a coin whether he's going to get it. And you've got to think some of those kicks would have been under the sticks. So maybe even a 40% play for Plummer to kick that one. He had kicked a pretty decent penalty earlier, but then again he missed that easier conversion. So flip of a coin play. Black kicks at 67%, so maybe a slightly better prospect. I don't know. Either way, he didn't kick it, and it was a draw. So, this game was a bit messy at times, handling errors, because it was wet. It was kind of to be expected. Sometimes the guys were doing pretty good, considering the conditions, and other times yeah, not so much. I did get to see Goboka get a little run early on. It's good to see that guy in open space. He could have kept going, but he passed it. The Blues, too many errors, kicking the ball out on the full. Handling errors, like I say. Overall stats, the Blues had 358 run meters to the Bulls 245, so they had that. They had more possession, 60-40, more territory, 60-40. Handling errors, both sides, relatively similar. Tackling percentages, the Bulls were a bit higher, 88% to the Blues 82, but the Bulls had to make 122 tackles, the Blues only 64. So on paper, the Blues probably should have won that one, but they didn't get it done. The Bulls did enough defensively, and they scored when they needed to, so absolutely almost, if they got a win, the ultimate kind of touring game where you go in and just put up that brick wall and score when you can. But a draw, I mean, I guess in the scheme of things, the Blues absolutely needed a win, so a draw is pretty much the same as a loss. It's not that much different. The Bulls, obviously they would have liked to win, but they just needed to keep the scoreboard ticking over, at least on the log. So keep those log points coming. 2 points is definitely better than none for them because they're still in with a chance. So the Blues go away to face the Reds next week in what potentially could be a bit of a dead rubber game, and the Bulls are down in Otago to play the Highlanders, which will actually be a very important game for both teams. So yeah, that was that one. The second game, I got home in time to watch the end of the first half, and I watched the second half. I've seen the highlights of the first half now. The Rebels go down at home 15 points to 20 to the Waratahs, and the Waratahs were in the same boat as the Blues before this game, that they absolutely needed a win to keep their hopes alive. And the Rebels are still in that position they were in last year, where they started the season so strong and then just kind of petered out. And then I remember the Rebels had, I think it was a game against the Reds. Maybe it was in Suncorp that they needed to win, and then they would have secured a playoff spot, but they lost it. And then they had a tough game away against the Highlanders. So this was kind of the repeat of that. This was at home, and it was against a relatively poor Tars side. They've not been the best this season. And they've got a game up against the Crusaders next week. So this was the game to win for the Rebels. We didn't do it. But credit to the Tars, man. They managed to keep their season alive, which is more than my Blues could do. Adam Ashley Cooper gets the first try. Good passes early from the guys. It's Beal, Rona, Foley, and then to AAC. 7-zip. Cooper kicks a penalty on like 11 minutes, makes it 3 points to 7. Then Foley adds 2 penalties. So at half-time, it was 13 points to 3. But the Rebels were really hanging on towards the end of that first half because Tamua and Maddox came across to somehow get a big try-saving tackle on Rona. And the Rebels had a maul, which looked to kind of go over the line, but the ref said, held up. TMO'd it, and the team obviously couldn't see anything. And I suppose, to be fair, Rona did put in a try-saving tackle onto Korobidi, and he was penalised for no arms in the tackle, but that's kind of what led up to that Rebels maul. So yeah, they were under the pump a fair bit, the Rebels. Cooper did get a try, but it was TMO'd and Rangi had knocked on in the lead up, so it was just the Rebels knocking on the door, not able to score, so they went in at halftime 10 points down. Cooper finally did get a try just before 50 minutes. He was running a good support line and managed to go over. His conversion went in off the post, which was pretty fortunate, so they put it within 3 points, and that's about as close as they got. Rona got a try on 54 minutes. It was kind of a slightly fluky one because AAC passed the ball back. It went through Hodges' legs, and then Rona seemed to kind of kick it, and he just gathered it, kicked it just accidentally. Either way, take it how you can get it. And they kicked the conversion, so it was 20 points to 10. Guinea got a try. Korobidi did kind of the little pick and go. But they missed the conversion, and that was 15 points to 20. That's the way it ended. A lot of handling errors at the end. The Rebels will be disappointed because from 70 minutes, again, they had a lot of the ball. Just not able to kind of get any consistent go forward. So, stats. if you're a Rebels fan, you're going to feel pretty bad. Like 500 run meters to 329 for the Waratahs. Possession 60% to the Rebels. Territory 60% to the Rebels. But key areas, man. Tackling percentage, Rebels 77%. Waratahs 92%, which is like test match level. This is Super Rugby, so very unusual. The Rebels only made 59 tackles. The Tars made 144, so they must have really wanted this one. They knew how vital this win was. And key for the Rebels, like in terms of their own, like what they'll be looking at in training this week. Turnovers conceded, 22 to the Rebels, only 9 to the Waratahs. So guilty of not looking after that ball. So as I said, the Rebels now face the Crusaders away. I mean, this bonus point loss does still mean they've gone first in the Aussie Conference for now. They're on, I think it's 34 points. But the Brumbies have got a game in hand and they're playing the Sunwolves, so will likely surpass them. And there's a bunch of Saturday games to be played, so it wouldn't be surprising to see the Rebels suddenly fall a few log spots this week, and then if they're going to lose to the Crusaders away, which is what happens to virtually everybody who goes down to Christchurch, unless you're the Sharks and can get a draw, the same will probably be true next week as well. So the Rebels could be in for a couple of tough weeks. Waratahs host the Brumbies. Again, it'll be a must-win match for them. I mean, despite the fact they got the win, they're on 30 points. They're one of 3 teams on 30 points. Doesn't get them into the playoffs quite yet. They're in 9th. But remember, those other teams on 30 points have got a game in hand. Other teams ahead of them got a game in hand. So the Waratahs will need to get another win next week and probably the week after if they're going to have any hope of making it. But yep, unlike the Blues, they still got the minimum effort done here. A good away win for them. You guys let me know your thoughts on the games. How did you think they went? Key moments. Would you have done anything differently for these teams? And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.